I'm just going to unmute if anybody comes in on the call. So thank y'all for coming to our board orientation, and thank you for taking the time to serve on the downtown board. I'd say we're probably one of the funnest boards for the city because we get to do a lot of fun things and creative things. I'm Jamie Carpenter, I'm downtown manager. I've been here for about 3.5 years now. It's hard to remember. And I grew up in Lincolnton, North Carolina, and I worked in Tryon before that. And gonna just start, since we don't know everybody, just do a little bit of introduction around the room. I'll start with our people first. This is all of our downtown team and crew. Terry, you just want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Terry Jacobs. I am the City of Hendersonville Events Coordinator.
I'm Dakota Parker. I'm the events and marketing assistant.
And I'm Lou Holloway, the Community Development Director. I oversee the downtown and planning departments for the city. And I started in Jamie's role back in 2011. And I've been with the city since they moved the downtown program in-house. I was the first city staff person to oversee the downtown program. My background is in landscape architecture and psychology and art history. So I got a nice little mix there. And really love working here. I started, I already say this, 2011. So I've been here a little over, boy, it's getting on.
Get closer to retirement.
Yeah, not there yet, but have enjoyed my time in the city.
I'm Nancy Nykirk. I moved to Hendersonville a year ago, June 10th. And my husband and I fell in love with Hendersonville many years ago when we visited people here, and we decided we're going to retire here. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to come with me, but people call me a gutsy lady. I did it on my own, and I'm here. I've for years been a program manager for most recently Stellantis, which you might know as Chrysler J Dodge. But before that, I worked for GM. And then before that, I worked for Ford. So I've been in the manufacturing arena, but as a program manager in education and training. And all my degrees are in instructional technology, which is probably not a term most of you know. So, but I moved here with drove my golden retriever here. Lost her in February though, and still have my 2 cats, and I'm enjoying getting to know everybody in Hendersonville and all that. So I'm probably the newest one here, right?
Well, there's newer people walking on the sidewalk downstairs. My name is Michelle Woodhouse. I moved to Hendersonville 5 years ago. My son was a boarding student at Price School. And so I decided to move here for a year for his senior year, and then I never left. My parents live in Franklin. Our family is about 300 years deep in Macon County, further west. Professionally, I'm a political consultant. I've been pretty actively involved in politics in Western North Carolina for the last 5 years, and do quite a bit of consulting work. So, and I have a child, that Price School child just finished at Chapel Hill. So for the first time in 23 years, I don't have tuition payments.
Oh, wow.
And congratulations. Yes.
That's a big feat.
Not yet, no. When they get off my payroll, that would be a different thing, tuition, but yeah, so. And it's a great community. I love living here, so I'm excited to serve.
I'm Aaron Adams. I'm co-owner of White Duck Taco Shop with my wife, Ashley Clifford. Originally from Charlotte. I moved up here for college. I went to Western Carolina University. I have a degree in English. Originally to be a teacher, but at the time it just paid better to be a line cook. And White Duck was taken on. So I've been working with them for like 10 years. And we opened up this spot on 7th Avenue in 2020. This is our 4th summer. And I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to be here for a little while, and probably think about our retirement also. Happy to be here.
when did you graduate from Western?
2014.
Okay.
Actually, a little bit sooner. She's the business major. She graduated in 2012.
I'm Sam. I moved here in '02. Really only got involved in interest in downtown and purchased Skyline Barber Shop right before the pandemic hit. I am not a barber. Don't come to me for a haircut. But this landlord there, I was having an interest, wanted to get involved. So here we are.
You're in Elon.
My daughter was going to. Yes. And I'm proud to support her. What's that?
I said she's outfitted you accordingly, right?
Exactly. Yes.
All right, well, so got some fairly new, fairly familiar downtown folks. So we've got kind of a lot I've done this every year, kind of tweak it a little bit here and there. And so I'm just going to go through the orientation, and the PowerPoint's printed off in the book, and then I'll go through what the other stuff is in the book here in a little bit. Figure out how to, okay. So first thing is, you'll hear us a lot of times say Main Street, what we have to do with Main Street. And yes, we have our Main Street, but we also have our whole downtown program is called and referred to as the Main Street program. And that's a national approach that, like, so we're an accredited Main Street community, and that's also affiliated with the North Carolina Department of Commerce, is where the North Carolina Main Street program comes from. And so whenever sometimes we refer to like what Main Street says to do or not, that's coming from like best practices and this accrediting body for which we go through. And Lou, actually, before he was here, worked for the state Main Street program some years back, and it's had some changes over the years since then. But every year, and I'll code this in a little bit, but every year they do a conference and different trainings through the state Main Street program for volunteers, board members, business owners, us, a little bit of everything. And they're really good conferences to go to. So the Main Street program started really through historic preservation, and it started back in the 70s when like downtowns were falling apart and buildings were falling apart and interstates were coming in and people were going out to the malls. And so then the National Trust for Historic Preservation came around, and they said, how are we going to preserve these buildings? Because that's what they cared about, was the architecture. So then they got together and had a few test case communities to determine what ways they can save their downtowns or save downtowns throughout America. And so they came up with the Main Street approach. What they found out was that what was important were strong public-private partnerships, a dedicated organization, which is what our group is, a program manager, which is what I am, a commitment to good design and historic preservation, quality promotions, and an incremental process. And this was back in the 70s, and it still rings true now. But they've had some evolving over the past several years. So we're one of many Main Street communities all throughout America, which is pretty cool. Like, once you kind of know how, like, that this is a real program, you'll go to other towns and try to figure out, oh, are they a Main Street community? Nearby, Brevard is, Tryon is where I used to work, Waynesville, Forest City, Rutherfordton. I don't think Franklin is, no, I don't think Franklin is, but Murphy is out that way, and Silva. So anyway, it's kind of cool to see that there's a lot of them. And North Carolina has, what my understanding is, one of the best statewide Main Street programs. So we're pretty fortunate here. And in North Carolina, there's a total of 70 Main Street programs. And they've added more over the years. We've been a Main Street program since 1986. Yeah, 1986 was when we started. And we, of course, we're doing a lot of downtown work well before that. we were kind of doing what some of their models were saying to do before or as the whole nation was coming around to it. So you'll hear us talk about these four main points. They're like the four pillars of Main Street. And that's where they've determined that like this comprehensive approach is really what's needed for a good quality Main Street program. And that's an approach that's focused on economic vitality. So how we support our businesses and how we provide, you know, the infrastructure and the needs to keep a business going. Design, and so that's where a lot of the historic preservation comes in, and also like our landscaping, beautification, branding, yeah, pretty much that. And then promotion, that's where Terry and Dakota really come through big time, because that's our events and our marketing that we do for downtown. And our downtown is Main Street and 7th Avenue, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then the most important, but it's not really talked about as much, is the organization. And we're real fortunate here with our organization to be a city department and to have a tax district, because a lot of organizations are just a nonprofit. And so then, and because I've experienced this before, the director is more focused on raising money to be able to pay themselves instead of being able to like focus on this type of work. So it's Hendersonville, in my opinion, maybe I'm a little biased, but I think we've got one of the best setups and one of the best quality programs, because not many programs get to have a Terry and Dakota and Lou and me, I guess. And so it's really quite lucky. And if you ever go to the conferences, everyone's like, oh, Hendersonville. Like they know us and they want to be us in those places. And I'll pause, like if any of y'all have to scoot out anytime, go ahead.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
People I wanted to come and put my head in. But
Yeah, I didn't want y'all to feel like you had to stick around. You know my spiel. Dakota started with us last year, and then Terry started with us in November of this past year.
Look forward to working.
Just to make y'all
You're in good hands.
Question about the last slide.
Yeah,
Map, are those the differences on those? That is like an accreditation.
the colors.
Main Street, small town, association.
Oh, so they used to have a small town Main Street program, and so that was with towns that were under, I think it was 2,000 people or 5,000 people, and they had some smaller requirements for those, but they've moved away from doing that to just having the full on towns. And then the colored areas are, so we have like our zones, like we're the western, and there's like the different ones. So then we have like quarterly meetings with our regional groups. I'm not going to go through reading all this, but these are kind of the guiding principles, what they have for Main Street, that the approaches are comprehensive. So we're looking at all of the areas, incremental, like little projects at a time, which really end up building and becoming a bigger change. Community driven, we want people to be a part of what we're doing. Public-private partnerships, capitalizing on existing assets, and that's largely talking about buildings and architecture. Like what makes downtowns important are the historic buildings that we have there, and it's really important. Quality, making sure that the work we do is done really well. Change, we were just talking about before we started, change that we have downtown. You know, parking is a big change, and that's something that we've got to adapt to and be ready for, in addition to coming up in the future. The 7th Avenue streetscape is going to be a big change. Implementation oriented. So we follow our work plan and we try to see that through every year. So as a state Main Street program, there's a few benefits that we have to being a part of it. One of those, which has really come about recently with a lot of the American Rescue Plan and infrastructure bill and all of that, there's been a lot more grant funding that's come available for Main Street organizations and different projects, and some of them specifically for Main Street communities. In addition to that, the quarterly training and the conferences are all, like just the network that we have with other Matrix communities is probably one of the most helpful things. And then we also have, or they have annually, awards. Just in the past few years, the Great Hosiery Mill, had won a Main Street Award for, building reuse. And it's the time of the year for us to be resubmitting for new awards now. So it's just nice to have that recognition. And then every year, in addition to the regular awards, there's the Main Street Champion, and that's our opportunity to recognize a volunteer or group of volunteers or people who've really made an impact downtown. Some things that we have to do to report to the state are to maintain our accreditation and maintain as a state Main Street program is a whole slew of standards. And these are all new. They've just did like a rewrite of standards for them. And so I'm still learning them myself. But I'll show you in the notebook what that looks like, what our reporting is. It's just a good understanding of what all we as staff have to like be thinking about, in addition to like just in making sure that we're following best practices. Some baseline things though for accreditation that we have to have, or that you've got to have an active board of directors, which is you guys, and as well as stakeholders and community members. Main Street communities are required to have at least one paid staff, and we're fortunate here to have more than that. Have a work plan that we build together as a board, a dedicated budget, and support from the city. In addition to, we have to, every year, we've got to submit statistic reports and all of these information just to show what the overall economic impact is. So this is what a couple slides ahead, our Main Street reporting. I'm currently in process of submitting our reports for this year ending 2023. So those aren't in here yet. I haven't finished them. But it's pretty cool to see the overall economic impact, particularly on the public and private investment. And these are all numbers that are based off of, so the private investment is based off of building permits. And so it's a fairly accurate number on private investment. And then public investment is what dollars the city has invested into public infrastructure. In this coming year, it was $0 last year because it's going to be a very large amount this year for the parking garage, because that will come into those year's numbers. But the private investment and the growth of that is really shows the impact of downtown. It started, there's 700,000 and then down to like under $1 million. And then from 2017 on, it's been well over $1 million in private investment. And that's repairs to buildings, purchasing of buildings, and changing hands of buildings. And so what we do every year is we report this back to the state, and then the state coalesces all of the Main Street programs to get an overall report of the impact of Main Street programs. The volunteer hours as well is a really important one, because the value of volunteer hours is huge. And that continues to grow. And what we do for our events is we have signups where people sign up for shifts, and then we calculate the hours from that. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the rules of procedure, unless there's any questions or anything at this. So serving on the Downtown Advisory Board, you are serving on a public body. And so with that, there are open meeting rules and laws that are governed by state law for that. So the Downtown Advisory Board, prior to 2021, there was a Main Street Advisory Committee and a 7th Avenue Advisory Committee, and they met separately. And what we found was we had so many things that crossed over, and each committee wanted to know what the other was doing, that there was just a lot of repeating of information. And so we merged together to form the Downtown Advisory Board in 2021. And so the board is made up of 5 stakeholders who represent the 7th Avenue District. They have to be a business owner and or a property owner. 5 stakeholders who represent the Main Street Municipal Service District, so a business owner or property owner. And then we have 4 at-large members, which Nancy and Michelle, who are at-large members. And they just must reside in Henderson County. That's typically, volunteers, people who are interested in being involved in downtown. We have a city council liaison, who's a non-voting member, and that's Councilwoman Debbie Roundtree. And then, but that usually changes every couple of years, just however they reappoint each of them. And then we have a representative from the Hendersonville Rescue Mission.
Who's that?
Do I?
Who's the Henderson? I volunteer there every,
It's Anthony McMahon.
Anthony.
Hmm.
I work at the front desk there every Friday.
Oh, that's good to know. We might be talking. How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing that since last July,
Oh, great.
so it'll be almost a year now.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know. Yeah, so Anthony is, and,
Nice man.
yeah. Then the next slide just has the list of our board and committee members and, what the committees that they serve on, and I'll talk about, committees here shortly. So right now, we've got a full slate of board members. We don't have any vacancies at this point. So in the book, at the back of the book is the rules of procedure. So that just might be something you'll look at later. Just a couple highlights of those rules that, if you miss 3 consecutive meetings, you could be removed from the board. Or more than half of the regular meetings. Again, open meeting laws, and I think I have that on the next slide, some more information on that. And then our meetings are always held on the 2nd Tuesday of each month at 4 o'clock, and we meet here unless something changes and we have to meet in another location. Our committee member or our committees meet the first week of the month. So our board meets the 2nd week, our committees meet the week before that. And then we will on occasion have a special call meeting. Just as an example, we had our last meeting in June. We wanted to get public input on parking. And so then we had a special call meeting following that. So that way the board was able to discuss the input they had received without advertising for public comment, because there's only so much time in the day. And we do typically try to keep our meetings to an hour. Sometimes they go a little bit over. So the information on a public body, this part is important as being serving on a public body. So any elected or appointed board or committee member. I'm trying to read it. So if 2 or more people meet and is exercising any type of authority, then that is a no-no. And so if you're meeting together, just be conscious of that as all of the board. It's a little bit harder with our board because we are so large and everyone gets together and meets for one thing or another. But it's just, obviously no decisions on anything that we are making can be made unless it's in an advertised public meeting. Ultimately, our board, any decisions that the downtown board make go to city council. But still there's not really any, it's not like the planning board or the Historic Preservation Commission that has a little bit more authority. We have advisory to city council. So I mentioned our teams and our subcommittees. So like I said, those committees meet the week before, so the first week of each month. And they spend that time really getting a little bit more into the weeds on topics and providing recommendations to then go to the board for any further discussion. And then that goes to city council. For the most part, anything that is related to zoning, laws, ordinance, budget, or other major projects go to city council. And a lot of times, just speaking on that, like parking, for example, the city council really depends on the board to be able to provide a good balanced response, because they're getting, they're getting all kinds of calls and everything, and sometimes it's hard to filter through all of that to determine what the really, what the resolvable issue could be. And so the downtown board is a good sounding board for that. They may or may not go with everything that the board says, but at least they've got that feedback from them. All of the city council meetings can be found online if you haven't seen that before. So all meetings are on the calendar on the city's website. And if they're canceled, they're also on the city's website. And then all agendas are here. So all meeting agendas can be found here. And minutes, well. And what I'm going to do after this is there's the handbook in there, and then there's also a video orientation that our city clerk has done. So I'll send that. Okay. So now for our program. So when I refer to Main Street and 7th Avenue, and I say, you probably hear people say MSDs. And what that means is Municipal Service District. And so a municipal service district is a property tax above what, they have their city property tax, and then they have a municipal service district tax above that. And so both of the districts, Main Street and 7th Avenue, are their own municipal service districts. And that tax revenue that's generated from that has to provide services that go above and beyond what they get from other places. And so like our landscaping, flowers, maintenance, trash pickup, that happens more downtown because properties and businesses are paying for that. And as well as what we do in our department as far as promoting and growing businesses, we're largely, almost entirely focused on that specific area because we have to by law. We have a small percentage of our pay that comes from the general fund of the city's budget, but in the large part, 95% of our time has to be spent within those districts or working on those districts or things that benefit those districts. Sometimes that comes as like with businesses are just outside and they wonder why they don't have one thing or another. If it's funded out of our Main Street or 7th Avenue budget, that's why they may or may not have gotten it because they're not paying into it. So a little bit of history on that. So back in 1975, the Main Street Municipal Service District was established. And in 1977 was when they did the initial streetscape to make the curved streets. What they did is basically the same thing I was talking about, in the 70s with the National Trust for Historic Preservation is Main Street was struggling. I've gone back and read like old minutes on a typewriter from what city council and mayor talked about. And the mayor at the time formed a committee on downtown revitalization. And they took a trip to Grand Junction, Colorado, which also has Serpentine Street, like Hendersonville. And they said, okay, we're going to do this. And they came back and they started working on pouring the concrete. And it was just Public Works came in and poured a concrete base to curve the street and slow traffic down. And they found that it, just like anything else we were talking about before, people will find issue with many things, but ultimately that's what's made Hendersonville tremendous example for other main streets, because of the focus on, slowing people down, pedestrian traffic, and just encouraging people to spend time, shopping and eating downtown. This picture was one that I found, which was pre the current street, but when it was curved, I thought it was an interesting one, because there's the power lines up above and the old planters. So at the time, that's when they established the tax district as well, right around that time. And then in the late 90s, the business and property owners in 7th Avenue wanted to have some investment into their area and their district. And so they established their own municipal service district. And it was operating as their own nonprofit until 2010 or 11. In 2008, they started the refurbishing of our streetscape. And so from 2008 to 2013, they did a block. I think it was a block every year. And so it started on the south end and worked their way up. So there's some things that are on the south end that they learned and improved on farther up, like how some of the brick planters are kind of in the way and different things. And so that's what we've been trying to push, is ways to improve what those south end planters are looking like. In 2020, I had started in 2020. And later that year was when Susan Brady, who was the development assistance director at the city, had retired. And at that point, the downtown and planning divisions merged together to become the Department of Community Development. And then Lou became the community development director, and then I became downtown manager. And so then with that was when we merged the boards. And then most recently, parking garage and parking meters has been a big thing to happen in downtown Hendersonville. And then budget wise, in this current fiscal year, for the first time, the Main Street and 7th Avenue tax rates are equalized. And so that's what I want to talk about now. So tax rates. Main Street, so with the property revaluation, the Main Street tax rate was able to go down. And so it went from 24 cents to 21 cents. Our budgeted revenue currently, or for this new fiscal year, property tax generates just under $300,000, and sales tax. Sales tax is a very complicated formula of how, like, state collects it and then they send it back to the cities, and it's way more than I fully understand. But then a percentage of what the city receives in sales tax, approximately 5%, goes into our Main Street budget, because as a business district, we do generate sales tax revenue. So it's about $314,000 that's budgeted for that. And then permits and fees, that's sidewalk permits, event permits. That's about it. And then our staffing is split up kind of proportionally. The Main Street takes a lot more time and a lot more work, and has a larger budget. So a larger portion of our salaries come out of the Main Street budget. And then new this year, we're adding 2 public works employees to work on maintenance for downtown. And part of that is, for years, we've had a landscaper who has done all of the flowers, hanging baskets, landscaping, and has done a phenomenal job. And we do not think we will be able to find anyone who will do that job at the price that we pay for it. And so we've been planning for his retirement by building that internally. So in the next year or two, when he hangs up his hat, then we'll have a crew that has learned under him to be able to take it on. The 7th Avenue budget, that number is wrong. It's actually 2324. So this year, for the first time, the 7th Avenue tax rate is the same as the Main Street tax rate, which is what we've been trying to do for a while now. and it fell into place this year. The Seventh Avenue tax rate had actually been lower. But there was a business that left the district and had several $1 million in business personal property tax that was then removed out of our budget because they left. And so that made a big impact on it. So that required us to increase the tax rate to be revenue neutral. The Seventh Avenue district doesn't generate a huge amount of property tax revenue. It's $51,000 in sales tax. They get 1%, $62,000 a year. Now coming up towards the end of the year, we are doing a streetscape project on 7th Avenue. And I've got a poster of it back there. It'll be from Grove Street to the train tracks, and it's landscaping, nicer pedestrian sidewalks, crosswalks, things like that. Been a long time coming because we've been trying to start that since 2020, but then COVID happened, and so we did a pause on things. And then when we tried to restart it, we could not find anyone to submit bids, be contractors for it. And so it took a little bit of time, but it's now happening. This is just a chart that shows how our expenses come as a result of the budget. So in Main Street, it's about 50% of our expenditures are personnel and benefits. And so that includes us. It includes the 2 new public works employees and a small portion of other public works employees because they spend a lot of time working on downtown. And then the operating and contract services, that is largely the landscaping contract is a huge landscaping and hanging baskets. It's a huge expense. And then we also have an arborist who maintains our trees. And then that small one for debt service under Main Street, that is debt on this building. So in 2019, the downtown public restrooms were built and, or I guess built is, this building was purchased roughly that year and they put in public restrooms because public restrooms were needed downtown. And then we had the upper floor and this was our office. But we've moved back to City Hall and we're going to be renting out at one or possibly both of those office spaces. And so that will pay towards our debt service on the building. And then we'll be able to continue to keep this space and the cubicle space as for people who need to have, meetings like us, or in like a new business needs a place to have virtual meetings or any type of meeting. And then we'll have a computer set up there as almost like an incubator space. So a new business would be able to have a place where they can have that opportunity to set up if they didn't have those resources. This was just what I was talking about with public works adding the new crew, and that's how that's impacted our budget and how we're preparing to not have our landscaping contractor. Every year we also have capital projects that are pulled from the fund balance of our budget. So that's basically our savings for each district. Oh, hey, Mark. Mark is on our board, our downtown board. He has Black Bear Coffee. Oh yeah, we're going through my whole spiel. Yeah, have you sat through this before? I can't remember if you did whenever you first started or not. Okay. You did? You're young. Oh, okay.
That's okay.
You get a refresher. We're getting close to the end. So as I mentioned, projects that are coming up, 7th Avenue Streetscape later this year. A one-time annual expense that we're going to have coming out of the Main Street budget is software called Placer AI. It is able to take cell phone data and tell us like number of people who are downtown, people who are coming for events. It's just going to be some really powerful information that we can use. In addition to that, it shows like what type of businesses, the numbers say could work, like sales leakages and things like that. And so I'm really looking forward to getting that. In addition to that, we've got some money in our budget for the avenue signs that we have on Main Street to tear them out and replace them with some nicer quality signs that look like the county-wide wayfinding. We're also working on getting bollards for Maple Street, where we have the farmers market that go in and out of the street because we close the street every week. And pulling out barricades isn't the safest method for that. And so we're going to use that as a test run. And hopefully it's something that will work for future events on Main Street as well. It's just a pretty sizable expense. And then lastly, we're working with an architect to create some renderings for the depot on 7th Avenue. If you look at old pictures, it has a pavilion that comes out of the top. And so we're getting designs for that to then look at doing like a fundraiser to build that. And that brings me to our nonprofit. And that's where we would do any kind of fundraising. So this is also where we're a little bit different as a city department, is that we have the Friends of Downtown Hendersonville, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And that was essentially started whenever we first started doing Rhythm and Brews, because we sell beer at Rhythm and Brews, and the city can't really be in the business of selling beer. And so that is a practice that other organizations do as well, to have a nonprofit, which is basically an arm of our department, essentially. The nonprofit in the past 3 years or so has brought in all of the city or all of the previously gray area events. And so all events come under the nonprofit. So any sponsorship and sales are all in Friends of Downtown. And this is also with the bear auction. So any revenue that's generated and expenses that are used for those events are in the separate entity with the nonprofit. And that gives us the ability as a nonprofit to do things that the city shouldn't really be doing, like facade grants. So there's we provide grants for businesses who are redoing the front of their building, and like a Goldsmith by Rudy, for example, we provide them with a facade grant, which we're reworking that program. But to be able to, almost like a carrot, to give them the incentive to go a little bit above and beyond on their renovation instead of just, you know, keeping it the old way. We want them to really think about the historic preservation on that. And so that, like I mentioned, does barefooting, the farmers market, Garden Jubilee, holiday events. And it also gives us the opportunity to apply for some grants to be able to help fund projects and other programs. And that's where if we raise funds for the depot, we'd be able to do that through the nonprofit. This next slide, you don't have, it's a little small, so you don't have to read that, but this is just what the budget is for the nonprofit. It does show a large negative just because it's collected. There was money collected the year prior that's not able to show up on here. I kind of shown this a little bit earlier before, but this is a kind of hierarchy of how we progress things. So as I mentioned, City Council has that final decision on budget and policies. And then the Main Street or Downtown Advisory Board provides that direction for what we want our work plan and want our things to be working on. And then we have our 3 subcommittees that go into the weeds a little bit more. Our community character, that group focuses on design, the facade grants, historic preservation, branding, economic vitality. That committee currently, we're working on ways to support or promote kind of pride among downtown workforce, because we think that's an important thing, especially after COVID. That's really come as an important thing. We want people to want to work downtown. Because if they don't have people working, then I don't know what you're gonna do, Mark. And then events, we have an events committee, and that's with a lot of our volunteers who help with events. And then that below just refers to where some of the different fundings come from. So the Friends of Downtown support projects really involve all three committees. But the events committee is pretty much solely involved with the nonprofit. Staff, what we do, like on a day-to-day, I basically oversee the whole program. And what we do, in addition to that, just a few smaller things, but it's bigger right now in this past month, is our sidewalk dining permits. So every year businesses have to resubmit their sidewalk dining permits. And I've got actually in the binder what the sidewalk dining guide is, just so if anyone, like, it's just good to know that information. It's a very small fee for it, but we do have some requirements for what businesses can have as far as their furniture. And that's something that now that we're doing permit renewals, will probably come back again at a future board meeting, because we've got a few that aren't in compliance that may or may not get, or we'll probably get some code enforcement letters on their compliance. When new businesses or people who are interested in opening a business are looking for places downtown, if you know of anyone, please send them to me, because one of the hardest things is getting people to know that we are a resource for them. Like, there's many times when people open their businesses and then they may have missed a step of a requirement for, building permits, sign permits, or anything like that. And it's so much better to be able to catch them on the front end of things rather than after they've already done it. So just being able to be known as a resource is helpful. And then anything that's involved with our work plan and work plan projects, including the infrastructure projects like the streetscape and the parking garage, more or less a liaison between the downtown board and what those projects are going on. We have many more skilled people at the city who know much more about engineering and building than I do. So they deal with that, but I, particularly as far as street closures or impacts on business, I serve as that part. And then Terry, you want to talk a little bit about what all you do while I rest my voice for a second?
Sure. See what it says I do.
You talk about what you're doing.
Programs. Yeah, so basically as the event coordinator, I have, we have specific events as the Friends of Downtown Hendersonville that we do, which is the Garden Jubilee, Rhythm and Brews, Barefoot and Bear, Art Walk and Auction, Farmers Market, and the holiday events, which we, for Halloween, we prepare extra year where we partner with the county, and one of those times is Treat Street, which is our Halloween event, and then we have the holiday tree lighting, and then Old Fashioned Christmas, which always celebrates all of the merchants on Main Street, and then we kind of partner again at the end of the holiday season with the county. We do two events simultaneously, which is Santa on the Block and Holiday Train Runs. So those are the ones that we do, and then create a social events committee and oversee all of the events going on. Some of the applications for the events, marketing and fundraising, Coda, assist, he kind of takes on the farmer's market for us. He is the acting farmer's market manager, so when we have the farmer's market, he is the one that's there on Saturdays. And then supports the farm office and JD and I and coordinates volunteers and keeps up with the organizational meeting and
Thank you. Not used to talking for an hour straight in a voice. So the last thing that I've got is, so we have this on our website and it's kind of an update of what projects and things that we're currently working on and have been working on. And this is in the binder as well. So we've got our annual report, which is a good document just to show what we had done in the past year. And kind of goes through some of the things that we already referred to, just what some highlights are on recent years. In the past couple of years, we've benefited from more grant revenue, which has been pretty exciting. The Henderson County Tourism Development Authority, that you'll hear often. I try to tell you what acronyms are what, because it's a bunch of ABCs, but the TDA, they have provided us with a lot of grant funding in recent years, and they are funded by the lodging tax for countywide tourism. And they have a requirement of a certain amount of their funds can go towards non-marketing projects. And so that's what's helped us fund several things, including what we have coming up, which is our downtown master plan and comprehensive plan. And so with the city, every 10 years, 10, 15 years, they have to do a comprehensive plan. And that's about to start here shortly. So there'll be a lot of public meetings, public input surveys for that. And that is largely related to planning and zoning. But with our grant from the TDA, we have a portion of that money is specifically for a downtown master plan. And so we'll have some conversations with our downtown board about what type of things should go into there. And I think a big part of that will be South Main Street and connecting to the Acoustic Trail and connecting Main Street and 7th Avenue. As we've mentioned, we do the bears every year. That's grown exponentially since we moved it to a virtual auction. It was about $50,000, and then in COVID, we switched it to virtual and like doubled it the first year and almost doubled it since. So we're keeping it virtual. It has been great. 7th Avenue, we did our 7th Avenue branding in this past year, and we're still working as a part of the streetscape on incorporating the branding into that. We really want all of downtown to be considered Main Street and 7th Avenue, but 7th Avenue has its own vibe, and we want to really be able to promote it as its own district outside of downtown, or outside of Main Street. Garden Jubilee was something that we just took on this past year. The Tourism Development Authority had done that before. In 2022, they had done it, and then now we took it on with their support. And so this was our first year doing that. And so we'll be gearing up for new plans for that. But we do have through the Friends of Downtown, we said we could only take that on if we have enough money to be able to pay someone to help coordinate vendors, because it was May is a very busy month as far as all of our events happen in May. So we wouldn't have been able to handle that. So we've got a great vendor coordinator that we work with on that. So then just a couple highlights on some recent accomplishments, which this is all on our website, trying to do things that we haven't talked about. So our community character team, in 2021, we did the sidewalk murals. That was all funded by a grant from AARP. We had about 100 people volunteer and helping with that. And so it was a good community engagement activity. We are also, the facade grants, as I've mentioned, our community character team has been working really hard on updating and improving that. And funding more of it because we've had more revenue that's come in from Rhythm and Brews and Garden Jubilee that we're able to increase the amount that we support for businesses there. Since 2022 or 2020, we've done 8 facade grants. And through the North Carolina Main Street program, we're able to do free design services. So they have a partnership with UNC Greensboro where they, like they did it with Goldsmith by Rudy, they go in and, or they don't go in, they research the buildings and then provide renderings the students do of what the building would look like if it were renovated in a historic way. This is an old rendering, but this is of the 7th Avenue streetscape that will be coming soon. And a couple of, I think I've talked about all of the things that we're working on there. Yeah. Economic vitality, couple big accomplishments in 2021. We received money from Duke Energy, $25,000 to give pivot grants. They were all just COVID related. So we gave those out to businesses to buy new outdoor furniture, change something with their business model. I think we gave out 12 or so of that. So that's been helpful. This committee also works on any type of, if there's any kind of zoning related things that are impacting downtown, the planning department will come to this committee to have some conversations on that. They had some zoning discussions on parking and the distilleries allowing those. This committee also, whenever we want to talk real more in depth on things for downtown employees or discussions on parking, which that usually ends up being the whole board. But it usually starts with that committee. And then also we received a grant from the Dogwood Health Trust last year to create the Downtown Hendersonville Opportunity Fund. And so that's $360,000 that is going, it's basically an investment into Mountain BizWorks to provide small business loans just for folks in Hendersonville who may not typically qualify for a small business loan. I've never owned my own small business, and so I've never had to apply for a loan, but I've come to find out that it's not easy to come by unless you have, a home equity loan is really one of the better ways to do it. And a lot of people don't own their homes. And so Mountain BizWorks provides one of the only resources for small business loans at a reasonable rate. There are requirements on your business plans and things like that, but we've got this to be a targeted investment for people who need loan capital here in Hendersonville. Do what? Oh, do they? Yeah, they've helped a lot of businesses. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Did you have? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do a lot of really good work, and so we're excited to kind of push that a little bit more, because a large part of what we did this grant for was to we've got a lot of properties, especially on Main Street, that are owned by very few people. And so with that, rent is going up, and it's harder for smaller businesses to be able to keep up with like franchises and big corporate type of businesses. And we don't really want Main Street to be filled with like Starbucks and things like that, because then that loses the uniqueness of Main Street. And so that's what we're trying to do, is provide local people the ability to thrive downtown. Another, before I was here, but the Gray Hosiery Mill is a huge project that was a city project. And the city owned that building for a long time, and it was probably going to fall down until they were able to work out with the developer on doing that project. So that's a big one. One other thing I think I'd mentioned before that this committee's been working on is support for downtown employees. And we're starting it as just like ways for employees to network with each other and trying to make it fun. And then maybe expanding into more things later. But we did our first one in June, I believe it was, or May. We did a tour, like a historic tour of downtown buildings, and then gave people dinner. And we're going to have another one in August. So I'll send out the information on that to the whole board. I think I've gone through pretty thoroughly of our events. Rhythm and Brews, this is the 10th year of Rhythm and Brews. Our next one's coming up on the 20th. It's just grown year after year. The farmers market, we started that in 2020. It was planned to start in 2020 and it started a couple months late. It was done with the very clear intention of bringing activity to 7th Avenue. Like, farmers markets are great things, but us as a downtown entity, we do things to try to make an impact in the downtown districts. And so while it's a great overall because it supports our farmers, it provides, grocery and everything, but it really is to activate that district. And it's done that, and it's been a really big event. Okay, and then the parking garage is another enormous project that took place. This information isn't updated, but it was a huge undertaking for the city to do. There had been, for many years, the issue was there was no place to park. And so then now we have this place to park, and it's just a little bit of growing pains that are coming along with it. Okay. The last thing I've got for y'all today is just in the book. I've got our work plan, which has a lot of the things that I've gone over here. That you're welcome to go home, take a look through, see if there's anything that you're interested in being a part of. And then at the end of the book is the board and committee handbook and rules of procedure. So if you can just read through that goes into more in depth on what you can and cannot do as a city board member. And then the rules of procedure is just basically our bylaws as a board and committee. Don't know if I've mentioned, so our board chair is Caroline Gunther. She owns WAG Pet Boutique on Main Street. And then our vice chair is Matthew Pickman. He owns Underground Bakery at the Independent Bean Roasters.
On 7th.
Yeah, on 7th Avenue. So we try to have it as balanced as we can between both districts.
I have two separate ones, one on Main Street for downtown, but it was merged to COVID.
Yeah. I feel like I've talked. And, real quick, since you're here, Mark, do you guys want to introduce yourselves as a board member? Or?
Mark Ava, I'm Black Bear Coffee Company, about 4 years ago. Got on the board in 2019, just after we bought it. Parking was the influence that kind of brought me into it. It's a great board. People that are on it, I know a couple of you guys, I'm not sure I haven't met you ladies yet, but we will meet. People that are on it are very involved, which is nice because it's often a challenge trying to get the majority of people in the two districts involved. They usually don't get involved until projects have already been discussed for 2 years or so, and then
But one of the things that I try and do on the board is I try on the 300 block, if whenever something big's happening, I go around and talk to everyone there. It's kind of like a liaison to the rest of the people. I mean, that's basically what we're here to do. And then I try and collect as much information from them as I can, and then I bring it to the board and we all discuss. People on the board are great. They're open to listening to all the points and hearing everything that's going on. A lot of the stuff, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the stuff that we do go over is slightly repetitive, like parking, outdoor dining. So there are things that will come up, and I ask you guys to please bear with it, but like outdoor dining, there are certain policies that are in place that have been discussed for years. And people will come in, especially that are just not even on board, like other merchants, and they'll say, you know, this isn't right, we need to change this, but we've been discussing these things for years, especially with parking. It's been like a 10-year process. So if any of you guys want to talk to me or any of the other reoccurring board members about past conversations on these topics, I strongly encourage that, just to get you caught up. But all input is super important, and that's why you guys are here, because you obviously care about the district. So it's good. It's a great board, and you get to be part of the subcommittees, like the events committee. We work on ideas for rhythm and brews, beer auction, and you know, the vitality committee. That's another one that I'm on the subcommittee for. You know, when we first got on, it was dealing with Wi-Fi, so we got some ideas for that, and then that kind of moved on to different topics. And now we're trying to inspire people to be working on Main Street, and how we can go about doing that in different perks. Because a lot of the small businesses, we can't do dental and vision and, you know, 401ks. So we try and supplement that. And the city's really great about that with the Friends of Downtown. The facade grants. City did a lot of grants during COVID about your outdoor dining and refreshing all of that. And, you know, it's great. And we try and share that with everyone in the two districts as well. A lot of people don't get involved with that, but we try and know about it because it's there for everybody. And they're grants. I mean, you know, I helped me put all new dining and furniture outside of our place. And I think we got 25.
I think that's what they all were 20.
Yeah.
No, never mind. That was different amounts because it was different matching. It was up to 2,500, I think.
I mean, we spent like 6, but you know, 6,000, but 2,500 of it we didn't have to, so that was wonderful. It's just it's a great community of the board, and we get a lot done. And city council is very opening to listening to our opinions and our views, because when you have all of us in here, you know, it may not be 100%, but they hear it all, so it's really good. And that's another thing, when we take votes on stuff, feel free to vote the way that you feel, not the way that everyone is voting, because even if you're the one guy that votes yes and everyone votes no, they'll hear about it and they'll know it's not unanimous. I think that's very important.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, it's a good-
I appreciate that. That insight that you got. Well, so that is all that I've got, and I just want to open it up if there is any questions for me or for Mark as a board member, or for Terry, for any of you guys.
There's some resources here, but how do we get about these committees and subcommittees and stuff that's going on with the city?
Do what?
How do we hear about them?
So we, for the subcommittees, y'all are encouraged. We try to have all board members on at least one subcommittee. So if you want to think about which one you want to come to. And then Wilson now, or we've got our, I guess I probably didn't include that in here, but we've got, so the Community Character Committee meets the first Tuesday at 9, and the Economic Vitality meets the first Tuesday at 4. And then the Events Committee meets the first Thursday at 9. Yeah. And I'll send that out. But I just realized I didn't have that included in here. So yeah, you're welcome. Like if you want to let me know, because then I'll for each committee, just like how I have the board email list, I've got email lists for each committee. So then I'll send updates and the agendas to them. So if you want it, and if you want to be on the email list for all of them, you can be, and then you just get the information Just let me know.
For the committees.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the economic vitality, community character and events.
Amy's super organized, and she's really good at setting out information. And we get emails every month with like a rundown of what's happening in the future, different things that are happening in different committees.
It's too.
And then.
And if half the kids are on Reddit, it'd be on top of everything.
Come back to the fact.
Oh, there it is, got it. Community character, economic vitality and promotion events, those three.
Yeah.
Three committees.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I normally have a sheet that has the 3 committees and I forgot to print that.
And when do they meet?
Community character is the first Tuesday of each month at 9. Economic vitality is the first Tuesday of each month at 4. However, neither will be meeting, no committees will be meeting in August because we're going to be out of town at a training. And then events meet the first Thursday at 9.
And they all meet here.
Yeah. Mhm.
And sometimes there's Zoom links.
Yeah, we always, for the subcommittees, I didn't talk about that. The subcommittees can meet virtually. So I'll always have it set up here where people can do either. The board, you do have to come in person for board meetings. If you're out of town, you can call in and listen. And you can speak if the chair allows, but you cannot vote as on calling it virtually. So we have to have a quorum here in order to have a meeting. We have to have an in-person quorum to meet for the board.
But we are having a board meeting in August, just no committee meeting.
Yeah, correct. And before y'all were coming in, I was working on sending all of that.
Meetings will be September.
Yeah.
So if you were to look at these 3 committees and pick the one that needed the most help, which would it be?
I think it really would depend on where your interest is. Because but really like your interests or your strengths, like for like the events committee, for example, they're doing pretty well. However, if there's anybody who like is really wanting to like be involved in events, like we'll take it on that because and then the community character, that committee is also pretty, actually all of them are pretty well full. So adding an extra person or 2 for any of them would be able to be incorporated really on the end. So it really depends on the interest of just as far as projects go. The community character is right now really into redoing our facade grant program. And we're on the tail end of having that finished. And then we'll be talking more on like vacant buildings and what we can do as far as like windows and vacant buildings. If anyone is interested in taking that on as a project on the community character committee, that is one I would love to have.
That's some empty ones.
Yeah, and what we'd like to do is we just haven't had we were just talking about it earlier, if it's fresh in my mind, is with some of those empty windows, just being able to put like some type of, we buy and print something and they allow us to put it in there. It's just something we haven't had
Events
the bandwidth to do.
pretty busy. Late fall into winter, it's during the summer, everything's on now. So a lot of people are really involved in getting done, setting up into the winter, fall, that's when all the planning starts for the next year. But I think the other 2 committees are pretty well rounded.
Yeah, year round. Yeah, they don't really change as far as what they're talking about, but the events committee it pretty much has their cycle.
We could go on here and see what has happened previously.
Yeah.
What about what was coming up for those communities?
So we've got, I've got a little bit of that in there, and then in the work plan that's under the tab in there, there's these, the spreadsheet that's got what we've got kind of on the docket
Okay.
for that. And then, a big part, so after this year, when the comprehensive plan and the downtown plan is done, there probably will be some shifts and what our focus is on that, because I think we'll probably have some good like vision and direction on that. And if it ever comes about that we need to, focus in on something, if depending on if it's something that's like needs to be done now, then the committees might, shift what the priorities are. But otherwise, we try to focus in on the work plan, because then otherwise people a lot of times will come in with lots of ideas, and ideas are great, but sometimes they need to go in the parking lot, but not the outside parking lot, but the metaphorical parking lot, just while we can focus in on what we're focusing on.
The city brings a lot of ideas to us that they already have kind of like put work into and going forward. And they just kind of want our view on what they're doing, which is great. But at the same time, being a part of this board, a lot of stuff, the decisions that we make directly affect what is happening. Like the beer auction during COVID, it's like, what are we gonna do? We started spitballing ideas, and doing it virtually came up, and Jamie found an online platform where they kind of see that overall happening. Then the next year was like, should we do virtual or not, and both together, and so a lot of the decisions that we make as a whole directly go into action, which is really nice.
Yeah, especially ones that are related to the events, because that's all through the Friends, and so there's a little bit more flexibility that we've got when it's through the nonprofit. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day and for at least an hour or two every month going forward. And